Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo of Doc Sports, back yet again with my main man, Ryan Sebring. We will get to Ryan in un momento, but first, if you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to like and subscribe to the Doc Sports YouTube channel, the #1 sports information YouTube channel on the internet. Turn on those notifications so you will be alerted every time a new free play or sports analysis video is posted. Also, take advantage of that free $60 link down below in the description. That's $60, same as cash, to be used anywhere at the Doc Sports site for any handicapper, any package, anything you want. We got you covered. But Ryan, let's be honest, everybody wants football picks right now. It is football season. We are in the throes of it. We wait so long during the off season for moments like where we're at right now. NFL week 2 done, NFL week 3 around the corner. Like I said last week, you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So right now we're going to take a quick look back at week 2, overreaction week, as you pointed out last weekend. And what say you? What was your thought about some of the things that people maybe overreacted to week 1 that played out kind of exactly the way that you thought they would in week 2?
Well, the game that I thought the biggest overreaction was Seattle. And that because they got beat so soundly by the Rams in week 1, we were already giving up on the team that we thought they could be. They overachieved last year. Geno Smith cements himself. We're excited. They don't play well week 1 and then created an opportunity, although that game got very close and it could have been a push or gone the other way. And then the other game that I really liked was Washington going to Denver and winning. Now, obviously, that wasn't easy, but I think Washington is a pretty good football team, a physical group, and they did get that game taken care of. So those were the 2 things from last week that stuck out to me. Well, I guess the Washington wasn't an overreaction. I don't want to lump that in there because that's what you asked me, but definitely the reaction to Seattle, and I love the value there going to Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, through 2 games, I'm firmly on record. Anybody that read my season previews, watched my season video about the Washington Commanders, I said I was all in on Sam Howell. I liked what I've seen from Sam Howell, that I believe that this is how you develop a young quarterback. Instead of just throwing him in as a rookie, unprepared on a bad team, they let him sit. They let him wait. This is a guy who was projected to be a high pick out of college, who has a lot of arm talent, and now we're seeing it. What have you seen from Sam Howell? Do you think that this is sustainable? Just what are your general thoughts on the kid so far?
Yeah, I don't know if I've loved his gameplay. It's funny because I was kind of watching him play and thinking about Baker Mayfield, and I was watching him closely and kind of comparing. And I still like Baker, and I wanted to shed light on this. I feel like the basic stuff he's running well, right? Like Baker might not be able to throw it downfield and some of that stuff, but just screens and flicks and handle, all the basic stuff he's very crisp at. And I think Hal needs to get better at some of those things, but he looks like, for someone, like you said, that had the year to develop into it, that he has some fundamentals, and I like his game, but he also looks like someone who, if the pressure gets ratcheted up on him, could potentially make some mistakes, and they have to manage him.
The one thing I'll say about him is watching him through the first 2 weeks, and it happened a couple times in Denver, and he got bailed out by his receivers a couple times. When he misses high. Okay, that's one of the things that you should look at when you're watching a quarterback. When he misses a throw, when his accuracy is off, is he throwing it too hard? Is he short arming things? Are guys bad on the deep ball? I like a lot of the throws that Sam Howell is making, but when he misses high. You miss high over the middle of the field, that's a turnover. That's going to be an interception.
And I haven't been able to watch every play of his, but I want to see him be more dynamic. Like with Dotson and McLaurin, how about a game where maybe both those guys go over 100 yards? I feel like it's, they're managing them, and that's how you have to do it in the National Football League. But before I really buy into Hal and start agreeing with you and getting on his bandwagon, I want to see some explosive plays, and he has 2 great wide receivers. He has a lot of weapons, actually, he can get the ball to. So I want to see a little bit more. And the comparison to Baker Mayfield, you might not have liked that, but I feel like I was going back between those games and just watching them.
No. One thing that I saw, a number that I saw after this, was that in 50 games as offensive coordinator for Washington, Scott Turner never scored 35 or more points. And Eric Bieniemy has done it in week 2. Now, I think it's kind of humorous almost. Eric Bieniemy leaves Kansas City, okay? Nobody really thinks that he was the brains behind that operation with the Chiefs. They have Andy Reid. They have Patrick Mahomes. I think they're struggling more because they didn't have Travis Kelce in week 1. He wasn't fully healthy in week 2. Their receiving core is kind of a mess. There's all these issues. However, you can look at this from the outside and say Kansas City loses Eric Bieniemy. Their offense has stunk for 2 weeks. Washington gets Eric Bieniemy, and their offense is actually, they put up 35 points on the road against a very good Denver defense. Last week, they scored over 20 against Arizona in week 1. That maybe Eric Bieniemy does kind of know what he's doing, and maybe there's some kind of value with this guy. Do you buy that at all from both?
He's got a lot of advocates. I know Eric Bieniemy has a lot of advocates that people think he's an outstanding coach. I know his methodologies weren't going over so great with some of the Commanders players initially, but I think his track record speaks for itself. And that's why I think I'm embracing the Commander story. But I'm not sure about Sam Howell, though. My verdict's still out on him.
Okay, the one thing that I saw that was kind of the biggest overreaction, it wasn't so much in the games because, as I'll get to in a second, a lot of games kind of went the way we thought they would. There weren't a ton of surprises in week 2, but the biggest overreaction from the books from week 1 to week 2, totals. Week 1 was disgusting football, a lot of low-scoring games. 12 of the 16 games in week 1 went under the total. We saw the books drop all those totals. They were in the high 30s, a bunch of totals around 40.5. So what happens in week 2? It goes completely the other way. I think 13 out of the 16 games went over. That's volatility right there. What are you expecting to see, Ryan, let's say in these next 2 or 3 weeks with scoring? Do you think it's going to level off, or we're going to see,
keep
the
going
over
up?
go?
Yeah, keep going up.
The scoring will keep going up.
I didn't see a lot of great offensive football. I think there were some special teams touchdowns, defensive touchdowns. There's a lot of that stuff going on. I think the offenses can play better, and I think that they will.
But looking at the
and by the way, that in last week's game, 12 of the games decided by 1 score or less. Just to your point of just a lot of grindy, close games, but a lot of money.
Couple other things I had here listed as games that went kind of exactly like we thought they would. Dallas pounded the Jets. That Dallas defense is amazing right now. It's unstoppable. We kind of saw that coming. We're both a little skeptical of the Chargers, West Coast team going east. They faced Tennessee, kind of that grind it out. Always play better than they should kind of team. You mentioned the Seattle game, great call by you. Pittsburgh, home underdog Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football. That it wasn't pretty. But that was like the most
defensive scoop and score for the cover, baby.
Right. Against the Browns, who were expected to win. Like, did you really think the Browns were going to go into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers on Monday Night Football? And then Minnesota losing a 1-score game. This is everyone.
Yeah, you put me on the spot for that one, by the way, last week, and I kind of took the Eagles, but I could tell after I took that you had some ammunition and you felt good about Minnesota being an active underdog in that game.
Well, the thing about it was just it's a lot of points. And when we do our, little teaser for you people, when we do our week 3 preview, we'll talk about how big the spreads are. And that was one of the things that kind of jumped out at me about that Minnesota Philadelphia game. And it ended up coming into play was that week 1 and the majority of week 2, you go back and look at those spreads. They're small spreads, 3.5, bunch of small numbers. For that to have been one of the largest spreads on the board, that Minnesota-Philadelphia game, that was a little bit surprising. Now, you were dead on about that Philadelphia was the better team. They 100% should have covered the spread. The thing that went the way you talked about was Philadelphia dominating. The thing that was kind of predictable was Minnesota losing another 1-score game. They went 11-0 last year. They're 0-2 already this year. Like all summer, everyone was predicting that the Vikings were going to come back to earth, right? And
And
here
to
they
tease
are.
ahead, how appropriate that they're playing San Diego, another team flip a coin, and they play each other this week. Unbelievable. I think they both
Okay,
are is good.
was there a surprise in week 2? Was there one or two games that stood
Yes,
out to you as really surprising? What do you got?
the Rams playing so well against the 49ers.
Yes.
And we're going to talk in our next about some teams that this week that we're going to learn a lot about them. And I just wanted to throw this to, it wasn't like the entire performance, but there was just times in the game, the Sunday night game in New England, that the Dolphins just looked particularly crisp to me offensively. They had a couple drives that were just outstanding. So I just wanted to make note of that I was just surprised at the level of play. And I know they have a lot of weapons and whatnot. I don't know if I trust their quarterbacking. But those are my two surprises. The Rams playing so competitively against the 49ers and just the Dolphins just looking better than I think that their ceiling's capable of.
Yeah, 100% with the Rams. The way that they took it to the 49ers. They go into Seattle, they beat the Seahawks in week 1. You think, okay, maybe Seattle was a regression candidate from last year and their defense is a little shaky. And there's always a fluke week 1 upset,
Yep.
right? That's my thought process going into this. They were taking it to the 49ers in that game. They absolutely played with them. Everybody was mad about Sean McVay and that decision to kick the field goal that covered the spread or whatever. And this is coming from somebody who had the 49ers. San Francisco did not deserve to cover the spread in that game. And, to put kind of a bow on that narrative, I know you're never going to stop the conspiracy theory people and the people that were just upset about it. The guy played to the whistle. I can't fault Sean McVay for making the call. I wish he didn't make the call that he did. But the fact that there was still time on the clock, his team was in field goal range, maybe the field goal only takes 3 seconds and he has a chance for the onside kick, he kept playing. That I can stomach a lot more than what happens sometimes in basketball, like college basketball, where everyone stops playing. Everyone is literally walking off the court, and the one guy with the ball decides to pull up and shoot a 3 or go to the basket and lay it in.
Unadulterated dunk at the buzzer.
Yeah, everyone has stopped playing there. Okay. Another one of my surprise teams I want to get your thoughts on, Baltimore and Cincinnati, the Bengals. Okay. Bengals are in trouble. They went 0-2 last year, so they've kind of been more. But I know you watched that game because you're rooting interest in Baltimore, but real or not, there's problems with Cincinnati. What are your thoughts?
Well, and this segues into what would be my biggest disappointment of week 2, because there hasn't been a lot of super surprises, but you could say maybe the Bengals going to 0-2, their offense struggling the way that it has. That Ravens game was not that pretty to watch. And we were just talking about the Rams, and they both play this week. So we're going to find out a lot about both of those teams. Can the Bengals get off the mat at 0-2 and have the turnaround that they had last year, where I think went to the conference champion? And then are the Rams, I think people thought they'd go 5-12 this year. What if they go to Cincinnati with Cincinnati's back against the wall, 0-2, really needing this win, and they go and play well and they win? Then all of a sudden we're looking at them as a team that could potentially be a playoff type of team that we definitely did not expect. But the Bengals, once again, it's I should have watched them more closely than I did. The Dallas game was going on at the same time, but I just felt like every time I flipped over to that game, it wasn't the crispest, cleanest football that I've ever seen. And I'm surprised because the story is always with Burrow signing, then veteran free agents want to go there. So they have this great roster and people want to be a part of the Bengals. So I'm just very surprised that they're, possibly looking at 0-3 and they're not even a field goal favorite this week at home against the Rams in a very desperate situation. What did you take away, Bobby, when you watched them play?
Yeah, same thing. I couldn't. It wasn't a very clean game, so I my takeaway from that was did the Ravens win that game or did the Bengals lose that game? Because they had a moment where I think they were down 13-10 at the beginning of the third quarter, driving down the field. Joe Burrow throws an interception down near the goal line. They were going to score on that drive. And I just cannot help feel what a momentum. And then Baltimore puts together a nice drive, goes and scores a touchdown, and it's 20-10. Huge momentum right there. I couldn't I left that game not being able to tell if Cincinnati had scored a touchdown there, gone up 17-13, seized the momentum with the home crowd, would that game have gone differently? Now, if your aunt and ifs and buts and all that, like, you can't play the if game. But I still don't really know what to make of Cincinnati, other than really it all comes down to Joe Burrow. Is he hurt?
Yeah, I mean, are they protecting him? It doesn't look like to me they're throwing the ball down the field. Now, and I don't want to misspeak because, sometimes I don't want people to hold everything against me here, but it looks to me in general, they're not pushing the ball down the field. And I don't know if that's because they don't think the offensive line can block long enough. He can't step up in the pocket, maneuver in the pocket, but it just seems like a lot of checkdowns and dump offs and outs to me. And I'm not seeing a lot of push down the field. So, but I think they were more dynamic in this last game. The Ravens they're always a tough task for people. So, but
okay,
they fall in my category that was as biggest disappointment for sure.
Yeah. Oh, as they should be. I know that one of the guys on our site, that was their big play, was Cincinnati. I had the Bengals. I was expecting that home bounce back. They've been so good at home.
Yep.
For me, it didn't make my biggest disappointment or my biggest surprise because, to your point, those AFC North games, you always got to look at the underdog first. It's never a surprise to me when an underdog pulls an upset in an AFC North game. Now, two huge disappointments for me were the Bears and the Giants. Okay. They're both as bad as they looked in week one. And I didn't think that was possible because of how bad they both looked in week one. The Bears stink. And I bought in. I wasn't predicting playoffs or any of this, but I thought they'd be competitive. I thought they'd be in the mix in the NFC North, right around 8 wins, give or take one.
But I think they can be. I think you're having a classic overreaction here, Bobby. No, I'm serious.
It's not the talent level, which isn't great. Okay, they have some guys. For me, it's 100% been a scheme thing. Watching them play against the Packers in week one, watching the two offenses operate, it looked like checkers versus chess. Okay, Green Bay was doing some really innovative things. The Bears didn't know what they were doing. Then it was the same thing last week against Tampa Bay. It was checkers against checkers, only one guy didn't know how to play checkers. Like you pointed out with Tampa Bay, they did a lot of very simple, basic things in that game, and they were able to execute. The Bears could not do basic, simple things in that game. Tampa Bay is not as good as Chicago made them look. Then defensively, the Bears are still stuck in like the cover two deep safety, never blitz kind of thing. Like it's 2008. Like that defense is done. They've gotten chewed up on third down by Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield. Like, what do you think Patrick Mahomes is going to do that? We'll get to that in the next video.
Yeah, I think I love the Bears this week when we get to that. And
well, to this point,
and quickly before we get out of here, yeah, go ahead. Bob. You had asked me like some stuff that maybe we took from week 2 that we could use later. It's funny because I said what my first note was maybe the Buccaneers are okay, and they're another team that has a big game this week where we're going to get some more information. And another thing is, and you'll know this better than me, 9 road teams won outright. And I just feel like road teams in the first couple of weeks have been having a lot of success. So I feel like with that's going to change. And eventually we're going to have some weeks upcoming where the home teams have the preponderance of success. And
that's
cover.
A great number. That's a great number right there. And that's 100% going to be something that we're going to watch in week 3 and talk about next week. Is home field advantage becoming overrated from a betting standpoint in the NFL? That we'll make that kind of a theme over these next few weeks and keep an eye on it. For me, the things that I saw that may be useful for later, Green Bay still looks pretty tough to me. They probably should have won that game. They got outplayed. They got outgained by almost 200 yards. But just watching them play, they're better than I thought that they were going to be. And they were this close from starting 2-0 with 2 road wins, positioning themselves very well. I also think the Patriots are not that bad. People are dumping their Patriot stock right now. They're 0-2 for the first time in 22 years. I understand that. But if you watched them play against Philadelphia, they outplayed the Eagles. If you watched them play against Miami, they kind of played with Miami. I thought they were the better team in the second half of that game. So everybody's dumping on the Patriots. But I walked away from that Miami game being like, you know what? They just went toe-to-toe with two of the 5 or 6 best teams in the league. And, they're not that far away. They're not Bears bad. They're not Giants bad. They're 0-2. But, like, if Tampa Bay was playing the Patriots right now, okay, Tampa Bay'd probably be favored. I'd be all over the Patriots because I just don't think that they're as bad. And then my third and final thing was the Colts offense. Talked about it a little bit this offseason. The Colts are going to score points. They can't stop anybody. It doesn't matter if it's Anthony Richardson. It doesn't matter if it's Gardner Minshew. I think there's going to be some value to be had with the Colts against the total, particularly because they were so bad offensively last year. So those were some of my takeaways. Any final thoughts to put a bow on week 2?
Yeah, we're going to have to develop in the next few weeks. It's really the parity. And it's funny, some of the teams that we're disappointed in, I think that they'll have up cycles and they will get to the 8 or 9 wins, around that 8-win mark. And you're going to have a lot of that. And I think at some point we have to talk about who is really any good. Who has the ceiling of potential, because there's 20 teams right in the middle, or 18. And as I said last week, you had all those 12 one-score games. And I feel like that's what you're going to have, is a lot of that. And we're not, as soon as we go long the Falcons, then we'll short them, and we'll keep going back and forth, because they're all going to have these games where it looks like the rubber's meeting the road. And they're all going to end up 9-8, 8-9, 7-10, 10-7. So who's going to be 13-4? Who's going to be 14-3? Who are those handful of teams? I see maybe a couple, right, in San Francisco and Dallas that seem like they have the pedigree from the last couple seasons and seem to be cooking with gas. But that's what we really need to develop, is who is really any good, because there's a lot of mediocre.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I'm looking forward to the next week 3 look ahead.
That's the trick of handicapping an NFL season right there in a nutshell, is exactly what you just said, and that's why we have these videos, and that's why we're going to talk these things out, week to week, looking back, looking forward, is figuring out what's real and what's a mirage. You can't just look at the final scores. You can't just look at teams' records. You can't just look at the spreads and try and base things off of that. There are reasons why things happen every Sunday. Which ones are kind of flukes? Which ones are mirages? Which ones are general trends that we can play on moving forward? That's the fun of it, and that's what handicapping is separating reality from narrative and fiction and things like that. So, all right, well, that's it for today. Be sure to check out our week 3 preview. We will be back next week. He is Ryan Sebring. I'm Robert Ferringo. We are Doc Sports. Carpe diem. Good luck.